So let's recap chapter 21. In the last chapter, Cecile makes the girls go back to the center, even though Delphine says they can't go because it's too dangerous. And Delphine, she's going to have to swallow her pride and return to the center after she made a big show of coming back. And at the end of the chapter, she meets this girl, Eunice, kind of makes friends with her. They kind of bond over the fact that they're the oldest sister in the family, and they kind of have that in common. Something I'm learning about the problem. Well, Delphine didn't want to go back to the center because she was afraid that she and her sisters are going to end up like this kid, Bobby Hutton. He's only a few years older than her, who was shot by police. And my friends, this is something that actually happened in real life. Bobby Hutton was a real kid, and there actually was a rally to name that park after Bobby Hutton. And so this is a real life event that's kind of playing out in our fictional world here. But in this chapter, we see that Delphine doesn't really have a choice. She's got to go back to the center because Cecile doesn't want them in her house, want the kids in the house. And I think that Delphine is thinking that this is just evidence, more evidence that Cecile doesn't really care about them. Because she's making them go, even though she thinks it's dangerous. It's really important to know that Delphine has a lot of pride, and I think that returning to the center means she talks about eating crow, which means she has to admit that she might have been wrong about not coming to the center, or that she didn't have like kind of the power to say that they shouldn't be going there. And she doesn't like to call attention to herself, and she has to put the spotlight on her and her family in order to do something that she thinks is right. And in the end, it's for nothing. So it's really hard for her to be in that spotlight. All right. As we read, we want to make sure we're paying attention to our lens, looking at character traits, relationships of both major and minor characters, the point of view of the characters, any changes, and of course, themes that might come up along the way. All right. Itsy Bitsy Spider. Vanetta couldn't stop practicing her poem. Well, it wasn't hers. She got it from a book of Negro poets at the center. If she couldn't sing her song, then she would recite a poem all by herself. It wasn't enough for Vanetta to say her poem, which was actually Gwendolyn Brooks's poem titled We Real Cool. Vanetta tried to be her poem. Since there was no applause from Fern and me the first time around, she started up again, as zombie-like as she could, to imitate the toughs standing outside the pool hall. If Big Mom heard Vanetta and saw her standing like a shiftless bum in the corner, we'd be on the next plane back to New York City. Vanetta was into a groove and couldn't be stopped. She started up yet again, saying every line of We Real Cool as loud as she could, in case Cecile hadn't heard her. I would have done both Vanetta and Cecile a favor by giving her a swift kick, but I didn't care if Cecile yelled at her. I didn't care if Vanetta disturbed Cecile's peace of mind, so I let Vanetta recite We Real Cool on and on. So interesting here. Delphine seems like she's still angry with Cecile about having to return to the center, and she knows that Vanetta's practicing is annoying, but she's not trying to stop her. Vanetta was a perfectionist, but only about certain things that would get her noticed or earn her applause. Big Ma said Vanetta wouldn't be such a show-off if Cecile had picked Vanetta up more when she was a baby hollering in her crib. I didn't need a flash of memory to recall Vanetta's crying. She cried loudly, and a lot. Our door was open and Cecile was in the living room, lying on her beat-up sofa. Cecile could hear Vanetta perfectly well. Vanetta had said this poem 7 times so far, and I was certain her aim was to say it 10 times each night. But Cecile didn't let her get that far. It only took 6 angry foot stomps for Cecile to make it back to our room. Cut that crap out. That's not even a poem. I could have knocked that out in my sleep. You'd think Gwen Brooks was some sort of genius. Then she stomped away, this time into the kitchen. I heard her hand smack the swinging door hard. Back in the 4th grade, my teacher would let us lay our heads on our desk after we came in from recess. She would recite poetry to calm us down and let us get ready to learn more science or history. Robert Frost, Emily Dickinson, Countee Cullen, and William Blake, all fine poets whom we should know, she'd say. Well, I knew a real live poet. I didn't know how fine Cecile's poetry was, but I had seen her writing poems in the kitchen and sometimes on the walls or on cereal boxes. Who else in my classroom could claim that they knew a poet and that she was their mother? So, on the afternoon that Robert Frost's horse had clip-clopped through the snow, I raised my hand and told the class my mother was a poet. Now, Delphine, Mrs. Peterson said, nice girls don't tell their classmates lies. She kept me after school and told me she knew the truth about how my mother had left home and that wanting a mother was no excuse for dreaming one up. I couldn't leave the classroom until I had written, I will not tell lies in class, 25 times on the blackboard. And then I'd had to erase the board clean. Ooh, I'm kind of seeing some hints at a theme here. So Delphine's flashback to her punishment for telling the class that her mom is a poet, it kind of connects to this idea of family. It's really difficult to be a part of this family, and it seems like Delphine is being punished for Cecile being absent from their lives. Vanetta sulked something pitiful. Then Cecile told her to cut it out. Vanetta only heard that her recitation stunk. She wasn't thinking about how Gwendolyn Brooks was a great Negro poet and that Cecile, also called Anzilla, was printing her own poems in her kitchen. Last year, Vanetta practiced her curtsying more than she practiced her wings and time steps for the tip-top tap recital. She fell on her fanny in the middle of her solo and was miserable for days. Usually I'd pick up Vanetta's broken spirits until she was once again crowy and showy, but now I let her sulk after she received no praise from Cecile. Serves you right, I thought. Just be evil. I rubbed it in as an insult. I don't know why your lip is hanging, I said. You're just like her. We both knew which her I meant. I said that to make her feel mad on top of being hurt. Just like I know how to lift my sisters up, I also know how to needle them just right. Ooh, I know I can relate to this as a sibling. So we're seeing some character work here. Delphine is usually, she's kind of like a mother to her sisters. But in this instance, she's really trying to annoy Vanetta. And I'm wondering if it's maybe because, at her heart, she's still a kid inside. And she's kind of like acting like a kid to her own pain. Am not, R2. We did a few rounds of that. Then a file not and 2. Okay, Vanetta. Suppose you were going to be on TV. She perked up on that one. Playing Tinkerbell on Walt Disney's Wonderful World of Color. But it was PTA night, or school talent night, and your little girl, Ludi Bell, Fern added in. Ludi Bell, I picked up, glad to have Fern's support. Ludi Bell had a part in the Itsy Bitsy Spider, in her Itsy Bitsy Spider costume. And she'd been practicing her Itsy Bitsy Spider song and dance for days. Weeks. A whole 2 months. The Itsy Bitsy Spider went up the water spout. I knew I could count on Fern to climb up high in her tiny, sweet voice. Vanetta sat there defiant, unmoved, proving my point. It was like looking dead at Cecile. A shiny white Cadillac comes to carry you off to be Tinkerbell on TV. But your precious little girl, Ludibelle is standing at the door in her costume, waiting for you to take her to school talent night. What would you do? That's easy, Vanetta said. I'd get the shiny white Cadillac with my matching vanity bag and luggage. And what about your little girl in her costume, I asked. Yeah, what about your little Ludibelle in her costume wanting to dance for her mama? Each and every one of us knew the feeling of having no mother clapping for us in the audience. When the big ma and sometimes Papa, when he came home from work sometimes. Crowing and showy, Vanetta said, first of all, I wouldn't dare name her anything as silly as Ludibelle. And my little girl would be happy I was a Disneyland movie star. She would tell her jealous friends at school, there goes my mother on TV. I bet your mother just fries pork chops and wrings out wet clothes. My mother is on TV flying around in blue fairy dust, waving a magic wand in a cute sparkly outfit. The Magic of Disneyland had won Fern over to Vanetta's side. It was all that the blue fairy dust and magical wand stuff. Fern's eyes twinkled as she imagined having a colored fairy godmother. I was looking to get Vanetta's goat, but I only ended up losing Fern, and Vanetta was her old self. Ooh, so it seems like Delphine's trying to make this kind of silly analogy about this imaginary daughter, Ludibel, right? And would Vanessa choose between having her dream job or showing up for her daughter's like talent show? But it seems like the sisters aren't really getting it. This connection between that she's trying to make between maybe Cecile and the girl and Vanetta. And that's why you're like Cecile. You want to be a fairy on TV more than you care about how your kids will feel if they miss you. Do not and do too went on between us until Cecile stopped back in the room and said, "Cut that crap out." All right. Ooh, we got to summarize. Who was in the chapter? What are some of the new things that we learned about them? And what seems important? What are you learning about the problem? And then also, how does that chapter connect to what you read earlier? Question for you. What can you infer about Cecile when she says to Vanetta, "Cut that crap out"? That's not even a poem. I could have knocked that out in my sleep. You'd think Gwen Brooks was some kind of genius. Make sure you use 2 details from the text to support your response.